Hello, my name is Magnus Gwatidzo, and I'm here to continue with chapter 4 of the book of Esther. I hope you've been listening and getting blessed and picking up some nuggets from this amazing book. Now, when we look at chapter 4 of the book of Esther, we start the chapter with a very sad note. It is at this stage that the decree has been sent out in the country to say they were going to destroy the Jews. It's a decree that the king had even signed, and Haman had even promised that money will be put into the treasury of the king for killing Jews. So at this stage, it's already happened. The decree is sent out, it's happening, and at every province where this decree was given out, there was a lot of mourning, a lot of wailing, a lot of crying. It is said in the Bible that they would lay in sackcloth and ashes. This was a custom in that era where when you were mourning, you wore sackcloth, you wore ashes. So it is said that even Mordecai, who was Esther's uncle at this stage, is also mourning at the king's gate wearing sackcloth and ashes. Now Esther is in the palace. As we know, she's the queen at this stage, and she's oblivious as to what's going on until her eunuchs and her maidservants come to her and explain this is what's going on. And obviously, knowing her own background, knowing where she came from, she was distressed, but she couldn't let on to her maidservants. All she did was to then ask one of her eunuchs, Hatak, to go and find out from Mordecai what was going on. Mordecai then explains in detail to Hatak what's happened and even gives him a copy of the decree to give to Esther. He then goes ahead and gives her advice as to what she needs to do. She needs to go in and see the king and plead on behalf of the Jews. It sounds all easy at this stage. Yeah, just go in, ask the king, you're the queen. But Esther does explain that there's no way she can go in because the rule was that if the king hasn't called you into the palace for him to see you, if you just walked in unannounced, uninvited, you could be killed. You would be killed. So, and she had not been called in his presence for 30 days. So this just shows the seriousness of the scenario that we're in now. Not being called by the king, and you're just going to pitch up, no warning, no invitation. And she does explain this to Mordecai. But Mordecai then comes up with very important points, which is where I'm going to highlight today, which I think we can pick up some nuggets and some lessons. The climax of the book, as of the chapter as I look at it, is verse 13 to 14. Which I will read, which says, "And Mordecai told them to answer to Esther, 'Do not think in your heart that you will escape in the king's palace any more than all the other Jews. For if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this.'" For me, that's the climax of this whole chapter. And from then on, just those two verses, they carry so much wealth and so many lessons in just those two verses. And I'll start by pointing out, I'll look at 4 lessons that we learn from these particular 2 verses. The first one is, at this stage, Esther was already a queen, and she's in a position of leadership and influence. But Mordecai does point out that if she doesn't speak to the king, she wouldn't fare any better. Just because she was a queen, it would have been easy for her to think, I am protected, I am safe. After all, the king loves me. After all, I am the queen. But Mordecai points out to her that if you don't speak out right now and stand for your people, you wouldn't fare any better. And I think the takeaway from this point is that as leaders, sometimes we think we don't have to take risks. But if we don't take risks, we never ever expect to rise up to the occasion. And this was one time that was an opportunity that had risen for Esther to rise up to the occasion. And sometimes for us as leaders, we think it's easy just to go the easy way, it's safer. But this was one time she had to rise up to the occasion and take the risk. The second point, or the second lesson that we get from here, is also Mordecai reminds Esther that God will replace her with someone else if she doesn't step up. It kind of reminds me of Luke 19 verse 40 that says he would even raise stones to praise him. If you people don't praise me, God says he will raise stones. So at this stage, if Esther hadn't risen up to the occasion, he would have raised somebody else. And sometimes it's such a heartbreaking scenario where the opportunity was there and the door was open, but you didn't take the opportunity. And so the takeaway from this point is that it's not necessarily that you were gifted that God is looking for. Yes, we're all being gifted differently. We are all born with a gift, but it's not your gifting that God is after. It's not your talent that God is after, but he's after your willingness. And we see this even in Esther at this stage, that he says, if you don't do it, somebody else will be raised for this. Yes, you're in the right position. Yes, you have the talent. Yes, you have the mind, the wisdom. But if you don't rise up to the occasion, somebody will be used by God for his purpose. So we know that it is God is after your heart, is after your willingness, not necessarily your talent. The third point that I also want to point out is that Mordecai also pointed to Esther that if she did not do anything, she would lose a chance to do the right thing, and could also lose her life. Sometimes we think that staying back and doing less is actually the wise thing, is the easy way out. But sometimes we don't realize that the implications or the repercussions of not doing anything is more costly. It's actually more costly. So doing the right thing at the right time might seem risky, but in the long run, you can incur a greater risk by not taking action. Sometimes I think it's easier when you look at life and thinking, if I don't take this risk, I think I'm saving myself the embarrassment. I'm saving myself maybe the risk of losing something precious. But in the long run, if you don't take action at the right time and do the right thing, especially as a leader, you run a greater risk of paying more for it later. We also understand, as point number 4, that Mordecai also says to Esther, who knows if you've come to the kingdom for such a time as this. If Esther had failed to act on behalf of her people, she might have missed out on God's purpose for her life. Now that's a big one, because we all know that God has a purpose for each and every one of us. And imagine if she had actually not acted at this point in time. This was a door opening, an opportunity opening for her. If she had not risen to the occasion, she would have missed her purpose, because that could be the reason why God has created her. That could have been the sole reason why God put her on planet Earth, to say you will be a queen and you will save the nation of the Jews. So this could be her purpose, but if she had not taken the risk, she would have missed out on her purpose. And sometimes in life, we miss these opportunities and not realize that we've missed a door that leads to our purpose. Now, I just also want to point out that another takeaway from this point is that you can never accomplish your mission by remaining idle. She had to take action. Now, question is to all of us, even to myself as I'm talking to you, what paralyzes us from taking action? Because Esther had to do something. We are told that she had then went back to, she sent a message back to Mordecai and said, okay, this is what I'll do. You go and fast and pray, and I'll do the same with my maid servants. She decided that she will go in and take the risk, whether she's killed or she leaves. That's what she would do, because it says in verse 16, I'll go to the king, which is against the law. If I perish, I perish. She is selfless as a leader. She takes that risk. But we know that she had to take action. Otherwise, if she had remained idle, there's no way she would have accomplished her purpose in life. Now, my question again is, what paralyzes you from taking action? Is it fear? It would have been right for Esther to be fearful. To be fair, we know her decision to go into the king could have led to death. So yes, sometimes it is as serious as that whatever you want to take can be as serious as it could lead to death, it could lead to imprisonment, it could lead to a whole lot of other things. But she took a risk, and she took some action and actually went to see the king. And also another question that I'll pose to you, is it the image that you're worried about? Because sometimes you think, what will people think about? What will I look like? Will I look like I'm an embarrassing person? Will I look like I'm a foolish person? This image is big for us. And sometimes that stops us in our tracks in order to and stop us from accomplishing our purpose, for God's purpose in our life. Sometimes it's a question, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I don't have what it takes. But God, as we know, has given us all that we need for godliness and for this life. So whatever God says for you to do, He's already gifted you. He's already given all that you need. He's already set people in place. All we need is the willingness, like the point I raised earlier. All we need is openness. All we need is the yes, and to step out and take action. I hope I've said something today that has challenged you from this chapter of the book of Esther, that you will spur you to just get into action and fulfill your calling and fulfill God's purpose in your life. Thank you once again for listening. I hope you will tune in again for our next chapter, chapter 5, as we pick more nuggets from this amazing book of Esther. Thank you.